Welcome to the August edition of the Fairport Harbor Public Library Test Kitchen. Tonight, we're making pasta fagioli, which is basically pasta and beans. And everybody has a family recipe, well, most people have a family recipe that they use that has a specific order of things, but we're just putting stuff in a pot and calling it soup, and it's gonna be delicious because Lee's making it. And as a special added attraction, we're gonna follow Lee's journey from being a little kid that didn't watch cartoons, but in fact watched cooking shows, to where she is today. Yes. Award-winning, whatever you are.
Whatever I am, here we are.
So take it away, Chief.
Right. That was Kathy's way of telling you this is gonna take a while. But it's, pasta fagioli is a basic soup. It is very similar to minestrone, which is also a vegetable soup with little noodles in it. So that's what we're making. It's vegetable soup with little noodles in it. And I might need to turn up a little bit.
Oh, you want it up?
Just a little bit. So as usual, we're going to start by sauteing our vegetables. So a little bit of olive oil in the pan. You can cut these any size you want, but we're gonna cut things small today so that they'll cook faster for you.
So it's
Probably don't
not
need that
like
much
watching paint dry. Onions.
Whoops, making a mess. So we are using onions, carrots, and celery. That is probably all that should go in this. If you want to add other vegetables, you would be turning it into a minestrone, I'd say.
Yeah. No garlic, really? It feels wrong.
Well, I don't have garlic here.
No, well, no, and that's fine. It's just, it feels wrong.
Yeah, throw some garlic in here. We have, one of the tomatoes we're using does have garlic. Wait, no,
right.
They don't. Brought the wrong ones. Or different ones, I should say. But anyways, yeah, add some garlic. We can put in some garlic powder, but use the fresh garlic if you have it. Has a more vegetable-y flavor for you.
And it's like a third of an onion, probably a quarter of an onion, and
Yes.
2 stalks of celery chopped very fine.
And if you notice, we're using a pretty small pot, so you don't, just because you're making soup doesn't mean you have to feed an army. You certainly can, but if you don't like having a ton of leftovers and there's only 1 or 2 of you, just make a small pot.
The nice part about this particular soup is it freezes very nicely, and it's kind of fun to pull out of the freezer on a cool fall evening when you don't feel like cooking, and just throw it in a pot and let it melt. And it's dinner. And on your way home, you stopped and picked up a loaf of bread.
Ooh, yeah.
From, garlic bread from somewhere, and yum. Seriously, you could just be the pick up your dinner at Lee's restaurant for Fairport. Could all just stop by. On tonight's menu is
I always put the vegetables in the pot in this order for no real specific reason other than I like to sweat the onions out so that less of their onion water taste goes into the broth. I don't know if that makes sense. You'll still get the onion flavor without it being overpowering. Like, we're cooking out the part that makes you cry. And then the celery, so it can start to soften because it takes a while to get tender. And then the carrots, because they have a higher sugar content and they would have a tendency to burn if they stayed in there too long. Of course, you can turn down the heat if that starts to happen.
Just by way of information, the onion is from Rainbow Farms. The carrots are from Rainbow Farms. The celery is not. It's from Mark's, I think.
Probably California.
I honestly don't know anyone around who grows celery.
It's hard to grow. I've tried to grow it from seed before, which I'm sure is the wrong way to go about it, but I have never gotten more than like one hair thin wisp of a stalk.
Maria, if you're watching, how do we grow celery in Northeast Ohio?
Maria, help. My brother-in-law has grown celery. Gigantic, beautiful celery. So it's possible as a home grower.
Really?
Yes. He doesn't live here. He lives in West Virginia, but it's not so much warmer there that I think that it would make too much of a difference. I don't think it's a weather situation.
Maybe we just have the wrong soil.
I think I'm just not very good at gardening.
I don't know. I could ask the folks at Rainbow Farms why they don't. But I don't know that, I don't remember. There goes the salt, children.
So we're gonna salt that and let it cook until the onion is kind of translucent, so you can see through it. Doesn't look like a thick white block of onion anymore. So it's starting to get there. And then since we just put the carrots in, we're gonna let those cook for a little bit. If they start to brown, you're gonna get more flavor in your broth.
There's a difference between browning and burnt, though.
Yes. And we're really not even going for a caramelization. We just want to know if they were in there touching the pan. And so we are not making our own stock today. We're cheating and using a bouillon paste. You can use powder or cubes or whatever. I really like this kind in a jar. It's just vegetables cooked down into guh, and then you...
That's the technical term.
Yep, and then you rehydrate it and you get a broth, and you can control how much or how little you use and how deep the flavor gets.
Are we at the 10 minutes part?
No, we're gonna add water. So this is the cook the vegetables portion. And this you add about a teaspoon per cup, but I already had salt in there, so we're gonna go easy on it at first. And then we can add more at the end. Because we are gonna add in some other...
That's the nice part about using either this particular bouillon or the powdered bouillon. You can increase, better to use less and change and add later to increase or change the flavor.
Yeah, if you buy vegetable broth off the shelf in a box, you can't control how much flavor it has, so you put in enough, and if you're kind of stuck if it's too weak.
It also doesn't taste like anything.
Usually true. So yeah, this is the part where you just want this, well, leave it alone.
Okay.
This is the part where we're just gonna simmer these vegetables until they're tender, and then we'll move on to the next step.
And this is the 10-minute monologue from Lee Negrelli. Actually, she started out as a normal child, I think. Were you ever a normal child?
I was always a normal child.
Okay,
Yeah.
except you watched cooking shows.
Yes.
While the rest of your peers were watching Phineas and Ferb or something.
I think that was after my time.
Okay, well.
Yeah, but I understand your point. I did watch cartoons though. I watched cartoons all the way through high school. I still watch cartoons.
Ooh, what do you
Yeah.
like?
Scooby-Doo was my favorite. Yeah. I really liked the classic Bugs Bunny, Tasmanian Devil. Yeah. What else? When I was in high school was when like Cartoon Network was new, so like the Powderpuff Girls and Johnny Bravo, like all those kind of shows. That was...
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. But that was when I was, in high school. When I was a little kid, it was a lot of Fraggle Rock and The Muppet Show.
Yes, we love the Muppets.
Yes. But also cooking shows.
Yep, she watched cooking shows and became a cooking show junkie.
Yeah.
And you started off as a typical American kid, I assume.
I
Eating
believe
things
so.
like hamburgers and chicken and...
Yes, I never really was big on hot dogs.
So how did you move from that omnivore stage of your existence to whatever came next?
Well, whatever came next was just that my mom's cholesterol was too high, and she called me and she said, I have to stop eating meat, my cholesterol is too high, and I said, okay, I'll stop too. And that was all it was at the beginning, but then, started watching documentaries and learning and figuring out, okay, this is not only about health, but also about animals and the planet and all of the above. I think we started with forks over knives, which I think at that time was everyone's introduction
Yeah.
to kind of the plant-based health stuff.
The thing that moved me was John Robbins' Diet for a New Planet. No, Diet for a New America, which was incredibly moving. And it was a totally plant-based diet, and given the fact that he's the heir to the Baskin-Robbins fortune, it was really interesting to read his take on things. But anyway, so you went from vegetarian to vegan, or did you just...
There was a short time period of vegetarianism. I think it was maybe like 6 weeks, if that long. And then it was like, no, if you're gonna do it, you have to do it. and we decided that we were gonna be fully plant-based, and that was the end of that. That was 13 years ago.
And what changed for you? Physically, mentally?
Physically, not much. I always was a pretty healthy eater, and actually I probably ate more junk food when I was vegan.
Yeah, don't let the word vegan fool you, because it isn't healthy eating.
It of course can be if you're eating plants and whatnot, but every time a vegan ice cream came out or whatever, you got to try it. And it was like, well, I wasn't really eating a lot of ice cream when I was not vegan, but now that there's vegan ice cream, we have to eat it.
We must eat it.
Yeah. But in 2010, when we made this transition, I lived in South Carolina. I don't know if the options were better up here, but where I lived, there were none. There was tofu, and there was soy milk, and there were Boca burgers, and that was it in the grocery stores that I could afford to shop at anyway.
Yeah, I look now at what's available, and back in the day, I learned to make hummus with no tahini, because tahini came in a jar that size
For
and was
$13.
like $13. And it's like, no. And you want me to use a quarter of a cup of that? No. So I just didn't put it in, which was then fat-free hummus. So you went from this to vegan and the food truck and...
Yeah. And
The evolution of the food truck was what?
well, so the original goal of starting the food truck was to bring some vegan food options to the east side of Cleveland, where very few existed, and also was to make vegan food that no one else was really doing. The things that were barriers for people to adopting a plant-based diet, like burgers and cheesy fries and things that people are like, well, I can't live without cheese. It's like, no, look, you can. These things still exist. And so the goal of Wild Sport was to say anything you can eat can be made vegan, and it can be awesome. And which included a lot of fried foods and a lot of imitation foods and whatnot. And even though everything was still made from scratch, it was more or less junk food. It was more for that comforting side and the things that you missed and whatever. And so after 7 years of standing in front of a fryer, I felt like I needed to do something a little fresher. I thought when it becomes food, when I'm making food that I'm not eating and don't want to eat myself, that's when I knew it was time to change. So we're doing fresher food with rabbit food. It's plant-based, it's locally sourced as much as possible, and it makes me feel better to serve it, and hopefully it makes people feel better to eat it, even though I know everyone carries a torch a bit for the Wild Spork and some of those awesome dishes.
Oh, yeah. Some of us still weep.
Yeah.
when they're not there, but
Understandable.
rabbit food is amazing.
Thank you.
She did this thing with watermelon, and if you haven't had a chance to taste it, follow the truck till you find it.
It sells out at almost every event. It's very popular.
Watermelon with, and she has a blowtorch.
Yeah.
that she does.
I mean, anytime if there's a blowtorch involved, it's gonna be good. But it's like, creme brulee where you sprinkle the sugar and torch it and then you crack it and there's like custard underneath or whatever it is. It's like that, but it's watermelon. And so you get a candy shell and then you have peanuts on top, which is so unexpected but delightful. And mint and lime zest.
Juice.
Yeah.
Zest or juice?
Just the zest.
Really amazing. I want to know what goes on in your brain that made you think of it, because you dream up all of this
Yeah.
nonsense your own self.
I do. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
You really are
just shows
scary. The cookbook is wonderful too. There is a vegan cookbook with some of the favorite wild sport recipes. Since you're not cooking those anymore, you absolutely could just cookbook those up and sell them.
I gave away a lot of them. I gave away my cheese sauce recipe, and it's on my Facebook. I didn't hide it. It's out there.
I'll have to look. All right, fine.
I also shared the bacon sauce recipe, which is just a condiment sauce that tastes like bacon. And so instead of, everyone tries to mimic the texture of bacon in a vegan format, which it doesn't ever really go super well. And this way you can just put it on stuff and have the flavor without trying to mess with the texture. So
Yum.
the next step of this, we're adding a can of diced tomatoes with the juice. They're just all going in. You can use a seasoned tomato, like the garlic one that I thought I brought. We are also going to put in.
If you are going to use
our
fresh
beans.
tomatoes, I brought cannellini beans because I don't like brown beans in soup. That's a personal preference. You can put whatever beans you want in here.
Oregano.
If you were going to use fresh tomatoes, would you peel them?
For this, I would.
Okay.
Anytime they're not getting pureed, I would peel them,
Okay.
unless it's like a, I don't know, maybe a rustic pasta dish or something where you're just doing like a quick saute. This is basil.
This is Lee's idea of measuring.
So we're gonna want this to come back up to a boil.
It smells really yummy. We need surround smell in here.
If you
because-
figure out how to make it, you'll solve all the library's budget
Man.
issues.
Yeah, well, but but the other piece of it is the herbs are from Old Familiar Ways, and it makes a difference because they're fresher. And
My oregano is not.
Oh, your oregano is not. No, your
Definitely not.
oregano is good old Tone's giant
Yep.
tub o' oregano. So when you're doing locavore stuff, I know that a lot of your vegetables come from Rainbow Farms.
Yes.
But you also said something a while ago about you can get things from California, you can get them from Canada.
Yeah. So it's really about when you don't have the option or don't have access to locally grown produce, read the labels at the grocery store, because everything that comes in a bag tells you where it was grown. And oftentimes in our area, they're grown in Canada, which means you have to, of course, check the company and where they're based and where they're growing things. It can take a little bit of work. It doesn't always tell you right on the thing. But a lot of the produce we get here that was grown in Canada is right across from Detroit. So it's really like 3 hours from here. So you can potentially get an Ohio grown product that is further away than what is coming from Canada. So it just depends. If the goal is to reduce the distance from the farm to your plate, then those
And
things
why
matter.
would that be a goal?
To reduce carbon emissions. If if something comes, there's crazy things that happen in the food system. For something might be grown here in America and then shipped to Japan for processing and then shipped back, and where we could have just done the thing here, you know, down the street. So when your food has to be shipped across the world, we're using airplanes and boats and trucks, and all of that adds up, and it can be a bit unnecessary. And so that's not to say that I never eat anything that isn't locally sourced. That's not true, but I do buy the local version when it's available, and if we can find things that are in season, it all adds up to help our planet.
And it's all about helping the planet. Plus, it tastes good.
Right. I mean, the difference between a carrot that was pulled out of the ground yesterday and a carrot that's probably a month old by the time you see it on the shelf, it's insane. It has so much more flavor.
The same is also true, and this isn't vegan, but the same is also true of locally produced eggs. If you can find eggs that are being laid in somebody's backyard, do it. The taste is totally different.
Okay, so I tasted our broth. It tastes good. If it didn't, usually salt is the answer, unless it's too salty. And then this is, if it's too salty, you can add more water and then re-season. This is the pasta part of the pasta fagioli. And you can make it as thick or not thick as you want. I like to get the pasta in there and have it absorb some of that broth. So we're gonna cook it for another minute. If we had even more time to talk your ear off, we would have cooked the pasta in this broth from raw, and then it really sucks it up and becomes a thick noodle stew.
And I would also throw some chopped greens of some kind in this.
Yeah.
Spinach, chard, whatever you like. Not kale. Personal preference.
I would use kale. But that's it. That's pasta
There it
and
is,
beans.
pasta fagioli.
See you next time.
See you next time.
I hope you're still watching.